DBT, was developed in the 1980s by Marcia Linehan, a psychology professor at the University of Washington. She originally designed the approach to treat suicidal behaviors, but it has since expanded to treating borderline personality disorder and other severe and complex mental disorders. Linehan herself struggled with mental illness and vowed to help herself and others. In more recent years, DBT has been proven to be effective with a wide array of other issues. Dialectical behavioral therapy is heavily based on traditional cognitive behavioral therapy. It promotes both acceptance and change in the client, which may seem contradictory, thus the reference in its name to dialectical, defined as the integration of opposites. In this presentation, I'm going to go through the origins of DBT. What are the aims of the therapy? What's involved in implementing DBT? How effective is it? What techniques and approaches are used in it? And what's the role of the therapist when implementing DBT? The basis of the approach is that some people are prone to react in a more intense manner towards certain emotional situations. DBT theory suggests that some people's arousal levels in such situations can increase far more quickly than the average person's, attain a higher level of emotional stimulation, and take a significant amount of time to return to baseline arousal levels. DBT is based upon a dialectical view of human behavior consisting of three primary principles. The first principle is one of interrelatedness and wholeness. A system must be looked at as a totality, as the parts are temporary and only exist in relation to the whole. The second principle is polarity. Reality is not static, but is made up of opposing forces, that when integrated, create a new set of opposing forces. The third principle is continuous change. The tension between opposing, yet connected, parts produces a process of change rather than a structure, which is an underlying condition of human nature. In DBT, the view is that the person is constantly changing and can learn to live with these changes, created by conflicting forces within them, in a positive way. So, what are the aims of DBT? First and foremost is the goal to eliminate life-threatening behaviors such as suicidal ideations or self-harm. As Linehan herself said, "You can't treat someone who's already dead." While self-harm isn't always life-threatening, it can often end up that way, and there's a strong correlation between self-harming and suicide. The second goal is to reduce behaviors that may interfere with the therapy. That may be behaviors like not showing up for sessions, not sticking with the program, not doing the homework. Things like that. Things that interfere with the therapy. And then the third goal is to work on reducing quality of life interfering behavior. That can involve learning new skills, learning how to work with other people, and learning how to work around whatever trauma or whatever is triggering the negative behaviors. Linehan said that the ultimate goal is to create not a perfect life, but a life worth living. At the core of DBT are the four models of DBT. They are the four areas that are worked on. These are mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, and emotion regulation. The first area, which is at the core of the DBT process, is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. While mindfulness is something we are all naturally capable of, it's more readily available to us when we practice on a daily basis. Whenever you bring awareness to what you're directly experiencing via your senses, or to your state of mind via your thoughts and emotions, you're being mindful. In DBT, an exercise of the five senses may often be used. This is where the client plans to think of something they can do to focus on any one of their five senses in the moment, which they should be able to complete in under a minute. This will help them to regulate and come back into the moment. An example may be to imagine the taste of their favorite food, using their taste sense. The interpersonal response patterns, how you interact with the people around you and in your personal relationships, include effective strategies for asking for what one needs, how to assertively say no, and learning to cope with inevitable interpersonal conflict. This module focuses on situations where the objective is to change something, e.g., requesting someone to do something, or to resist changes someone else is trying to make, e.g., saying no. The skills taught are intended to maximize the chances that a person's goals in a specific situation will be met, while at the same time not damaging either the relationship or the person's self-respect. The third module is about distress tolerance. Most approaches to mental health treatment focus on changing distressing events and circumstances. They pay little attention to accepting, finding meaning for, and tolerating distress. DBT emphasizes learning to bear pain skillfully. Distress tolerance skills constitute a natural development from mindfulness skills. They have to do with the ability to accept, in a non-evaluative and non-judgmental way, both yourself and the current situation. Although the view advocated here is a non-judgmental one, this does not mean that it is one of approval. Acceptance of reality is not approval of reality. Distress tolerance behaviors are concerned with tolerating and surviving crises and with accepting life as it is in the moment. 4 sets of crisis survival strategies are taught: distracting, self-soothing, improving the moment, and thinking of pros and cons. Acceptance skills include radical acceptance, turning the mind toward acceptance, and willingness versus willfulness, choosing to work with your circumstances rather than trying to fight against them. Emotion regulation skills training would borrow heavily from the traditional CBT model using cognitive and behavioral techniques. Cognitive techniques used include cognitive restructuring, guided discovery, the downward arrow technique, and journaling, or thought records. Behavioral techniques can include graded task assignments, activity scheduling, and relaxation techniques. The wise mind is a core DBT mindfulness skill. In DBT, wise mind is one of 3 states of minds we can operate out of, and this is reminiscent of Freud's concept of the ID, ego, and superego. Through wise mind, we can access our inner wisdom and intuition, but in order to comprehend what we mean by wise mind, it's helpful to first understand the other 2 states of mind, reasonable mind and emotional mind. Reasonable mind is our traditional thinking state of mind. It's our practical and pragmatic, logical and rational, task and rule-oriented way of thinking grounded in facts and reason. Emotion mind is the opposite of reasonable mind. Emotion mind isn't necessarily unreasonable, but it is not reasonable in the sense that it doesn't rely on reason. It is not concerned with facts or logic. When we're working from our emotion mind, we're governed by our moods and emotions, how we're feeling, and we act based on the urges that arise from our emotional state, rather than based on any sort of thought-out plan. Wise mind is the synthesis of reasonable mind and emotional mind. It's where these 2 states of mind overlap. It takes into account both the rational and emotional, our logic and our feelings. It's practical and sensitive to how we feel. It lets us see the whole picture and think and act in ways that are reasonable while remaining true to ourselves and our nature. Through therapy, the therapist guides the client in a negotiation between their reasonable mind and their emotion mind to get to an understanding of their wise mind. Marsha Linehan originally began developing DBT to better treat suicidal clients. Today, the therapy is best known for its use among people with borderline personality disorder. It has also been used to treat several other disorders, including eating disorders, substance abuse, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. DBT can be administered in various inpatient and outpatient settings. However, there are areas where it shouldn't be applied. For example, for clients with psychosis, like psychotic depression, mania, schizophrenia, and organic mental disorders, such as dementia, antisocial personality disorder, and severe borderline personality disorder. It's also contraindicated for clients with cognitive impairments. Standard DBT was designed to be administered by a multidisciplinary team, which would include a therapist for the one-to-one sessions, at least one DBT-trained therapist for the group therapy session, and as well as people to be on call for the telephone contact side of it. This would require quite a number of people, which would be a very big commitment for a private practice. DBT-informed treatment is treatment that uses some of the methods or structure of DBT, e.g., using the DBT manual to teach skills, individual therapy following the priorities of DBT, and does not meet all of the functions. While DBT-informed treatment can be very helpful for many clients, It is important to recognize that research shows that standard DBT is the most effective, especially for clients who suffer with more severe symptoms. The role of the therapist is manifold. The therapist will prioritize goals with the client in order of priority to the successful treatment, commencing with life-threatening behaviors. The therapist will then build a relationship with the client so the client can trust them. The client needs to be able to trust the therapist so they will attend and work on their treatment with the therapist and can feel safe doing so. Next, the therapist will try to instill hope in the client that this problem is something that can be done, something you can both work with, and to give them hope that they will have the tools they need at the end. The therapist facilitates the psychoeducational process to educate the client on how it's going to work and why you're doing what you're doing. There's also a collaboration between the client and therapist. Collaboration is important because it empowers the client that they have come up with a solution themselves. The therapist is just a guide. They've taken back some control in their lives. In conclusion, while standard DBT can be very effective for the treatment of a variety of disorders, this is based on its administration by a well-funded multidisciplinary team.